Welcome back to the second episode, for the third episode actually, of this Nimby tutorial and later on playthrough. Now, I am recording this back to back because I kind of feel motivated for it right now. But today, it's all about actually how to set up a basic line in Nimby Rails. We will also explore how to do a basic schedule. For this, we only need one more thing really, and you will see later on why we need this. We essentially just need one random track where we can actually put the train later on, so a depot. So we turn back on our speed overview. I turn it off because I had to take a screenshot for a thumbnail, and we put this entire depot right here, everything up to here we put at 40. 40 or 20 is generally a good speed for depots. I prefer 40 because I think 20 is just pretty slow. And now we can do something else, because if we want to build a line and schedule our train later, if you want to be realistic, trains at night mostly don't run. Sure, there are a few lines, especially in big metropolitan areas right here, there are lines that run throughout the night. But the line we're building today is certainly not gonna run overnight, which is why we need a depot for it. We need 120 meters. That's fine. Now, if you were to build this to standardized Nimby standards, what you would normally do is country code. D stands for depot and then the name. Hauptbahnhof A, for example. Now, since we're not really to that standard in this project, this is enough. The D just stands for depot, and then what you do is, for your depots, because obviously you don't want packs entering or exiting here, and also you don't want this to generate packs, which can happen, you turn the population radius to 0 and you put it on name only. So now you have a visual distinction between your main stations and your depots. Also, it's enough to just put a simple signal here. We don't need anything else. Yeah, and this is enough to schedule a line for us. Now, how do we actually start scheduling? Well, first things first, we have to build the track. Now, for this, the first thing I like to check is go to global. Normally, if you build custom platforms, this will happen. You will have invalid sizes. You just press this arrow and you just delete every single one of them. These are just normally small overhangs that are too small for the game to recognize. You can almost like 99.99% just delete them without even looking at them. Like you can see, all the platforms we build are completely fine, but now these random overhangs that you actually aren't able to see most of the time are gone. Now, we could go and build global. However, this is very bad practice. Let's say you are building an intercity network and you have saved up to 3 to 4 billion. And now you suddenly press build all and now all your money is gone. Because it cost you like 2 billion to 3 billion to build everything and you lost all your money. Although you didn't want to do that. Yeah, what you do to prevent you from accidentally clicking this button, because it looks very similar to build selected, if you don't look at it too closely, and trust me, you will use this button a lot, the build selected button, which is why you won't always look closely at it, is you simply block the option to build global. How do you do that? Well, the most common way to do it is actually to just run a piece of track into water. So you put a piece of track from land into water so that you have one collision. You will always have one collision here, so that's going to be your call to know, okay, so if there's one collision here, I'm actually completely fine, I have no collisions in my network. And now, build all blueprints is permanently locked. You can't build all blueprints now, which is great. Now, we talk about build selection. So, well, I mean, what is that to talk about? I already used it in the last tutorial, if I remember correctly, without explaining it. You just select, and then you can build your selection. There are obviously still options like to only keep tracks in the selection or to only keep buildings in the selection. So I could build only the tracks and keep the building a blueprint, but I really don't see the point why I should do this in this case. So we just simply build. Now, this is the retarded way to do it. The faster way is press Shift, and now you can actually mark multiple things like so. So we just, I mean, effectively what we've done right now is a build all, but we did it because we haven't built anything else besides, you know, the tracks we need for this tutorial so far. Now, before we can now build our first line theoretically. So there are two buttons down here, if you have no line, that are important. The first one is create a depot and create a line. We care about the line for now. If we press this button, oh, a white line has appeared. Lines, we only talk about basic tags. We will talk about every of these tags actually, except extensions. This is mods. We don't care about that right now. We talk about these 4 tabs: basics to auto run line. Name, pretty self-explanatory. Code, this is the operating code of your line. This is actually displayed on a driving train. So, for example, if we what we are doing right now is building RB36. What I like to do add write the 2 stations this line runs between in name, and then for code I just put the line number. Obviously, depending on country, this will differ. But that's those 2 sections. This is pretty self-explanatory. Base ticket price, essentially, if a PAX enters your train, they pay a base fare. And here you can set that base fare. Price per kilometer, also self-explanatory. Each kilometer PAX drives with a train, he pays this price you enter here. Now, I think the maximum you can enter here, you can enter 100? I didn't know that that was possible. You can even have 1000. Okay, I thought always 50 was the limit, but apparently it's not. But I'm pretty certain here the limit is 5. Okay, that must have expanded since the last time, I think. So, you can have a maximum of 10, and I think 999 then. I think 1000 is... yeah, so a maximum of 1000 and a maximum of 10. Now, if you just want to earn money at the beginning, put whatever. Put a high base price and put a high price per kilometer. For example, if you just want to shuffle money, 5 and 1. This is very expensive for the packs, but it works and they're almost always satisfied. If you want to go more realistic, something like this. But yeah, realistically, use this. It just saves you a lot of time and a lot of waiting. Now, next thing, line color. What color do you want your line to be? Do you want it a nice aqua? Do you want it dark blue? Do you want it purple, red, orange, whatever? Self-explanatory. That's line color. Display in map is something different. Loop basically means if I now put... I will get to what I'm doing later on. We now go into line overlay. If it's put to loop, it'll basically show the auto-completion of the line. So basically what the AI does to connect these stations up back together. If we put it to non-loop, it only shows the path between the stations and nothing the AI actually does to auto-connect these stations back together via pathfinding, so just from here to here. And disabled means, yeah, the line isn't shown at all. This is very nice for depots. In fact, I think the default for depots is disabled for display in map. I tend to always use non-loop because it actually very well shows you what sections you have already built. I know most people will probably use loop. I personally prefer non-loop as an option. Now, reference train. This is when we buy a train. Let's go down to my German trains. I know I have a lot of trains installed, but it really is fine. It doesn't really hamper the performance of the game that much. I don't think it does at all, really. and you just have a big selection. If we take a realistic train that would run on this line, I don't know what would run on this line realistically. No, probably double traction 443 or something like this, like a double talent. Yeah, that would probably run on this line. But this really doesn't have that much capacity. I talked about this. We will put this down to 50. Just so that we actually don't drown in packs. So, I know in real life this line was electrified. So I will just do a quick, I will do an more in-depth explanation on this one at some time. I will just build myself a quick train together. Wait a second. So I want an electric locomotive. Let's say a BR 111, just for the fun of it. And then I want it to be with a Dostos. Where are my Dostos? Let's just take yeah, actually it's just used second generation just because I feel like it right now. Append. Here you can see the length of the train. We can't go above 120. 122 is probably fine. And this is RV36. Now, if you purchase this train, I'm just doing this because I want a custom train for this line later on. Here, now, when doing timings and calculating the distance between stations and the time it takes the train, it'll use this train stats as a reference. So it will use its maximum speed per hour, kilometers per hour. It'll use its acceleration and deceleration. That's basically it. That is what a reference train is used for. You can do a lot of funny things with this. For example, if you put a tram here as a reference train, but put the ICE on the line, the ICE will actually have a max speed of the tram. So like 60 kilometers per hour or something. So be always very careful what train you've actually chosen as your reference train here. So is the closed. This is basically when you do maintenance on the line. However, this doesn't really work that well most of the time. But yeah, this is the default how a line is spawned. Technical maneuvers, this is essentially depots. So yeah, you can just press theoretically this line and put it on a depot instead of pushing this button. The only difference does this does a depot, and it kind of already gives you a few pre-configured things. But most of the lines should be obviously on passenger service, since there is no cargo service. Next thing, tags. You have the ability to tag a line to something. We talked about the tag system before, and let's add a tag. We call this a project. We are inside of NRW. This is generally how I structure it. If you were to do multiple countries, you would obviously put your countries on the project and then put NRW under your country, for example Germany in this case. And now in NRW we add another track that we call Regionalbahn. Now if we go to this, we can open this tab, we can open this tab, and we can tag it under Regionalbahn. Nothing has changed, but if we change the view from group by all lines to group by tags, now you actually get a nice hierarchical structure of your lines being pre-sorted. This is very nice. So that's what you can use tags for. Default timings. So this one is where it gets a little bit difficult. So cruise speed, essentially. If you think about a train traveling between two stations, we have a max speed set right here on the track, right? Like it's 100 kilometers per hour. But that is the max speed. That's not the cruise speed. By default, trains always travel a little bit slower on tracks than their actual max speed of the track or the train would allow. This is so that trains can actually catch up on delay if they're delayed by just simply traveling faster on a given piece of line than they would normally on the timetable. This is what cruise speed is for. For this sake, we will keep cruise speed on. You can, however, also just say bolts to the wall, put 600 here, and basically what this does is if this train goes 140 kilometers per hour, and if it can go 140 kilometers per hour, it will go 140 kilometers per hour. Essentially, this just forces every train to always run at the max speed setting that it can. So for this, it would be 140. Obviously, if the track permits. If it doesn't permit, this would obviously only run at 100 kilometers per hour here. But since we are very nice, we will actually keep the cruise speed setting. Acceleration, deceleration, I've never toyed with these, but it is the same with here. You can just override the default values. It accelerates faster and it decelerates faster. Now, default stop time. This is basically the default stop time a train has at a station. For your own sake, when you're doing heavy rail, you should always put this at 1 minute. It makes a lot of things easier. Line duration. This essentially tells the train how long a line is, but we will get to all the other things that come after this, after we've actually added stops. There are two ways to add stops. Either basic mode, where you just have these two arrows, or set to just one arrow, or advanced mode. I would always suggest using advanced mode. Now, if we hover over station, this bar appears right here. This is what tells us, hey, you can actually stop a train here. So this, essentially you can select a platform with it. This, right here, these two arrows are the directions the train is coming from. This is very important. If we now put it like so, this won't work, because it would presume that the train would be coming from this direction and stopping here, but there is nothing the train is coming from. Which is why the first stop is, we go at the edge of the station, we press this arrow, and now we can see, yeah, our stop pretty much fits perfectly into this platform. And now we've created the first stop. Now let's create all the other stops on the line. After stopping there, the train stops here, obviously on this side of the track. Then it stops here. It stops here. And it stops right here. And the nice thing about the custom mode is you can put trains in the middle of a platform. If we had only basic mode, you could only put them, where the basic mode allowed you, which is why I always use advanced mode for basically any line I do. There really isn't any advantage to doing basic mode at all. Here we have a little bit of overhang, but that's fine. That's also realistic, like many lines do have that sometimes. And we continue, and we continue. Now, here we have something that always, I would say it's pretty controversial, but I always add the first station twice. So basically as a start and the end point. You don't have to do this, but it makes your life a lot easier if you do it later on. Now that we've actually have our stops added to the line, we can actually talk about a few things. First of all, we take a look at what stops actually do. So, we have lag timing. It is essentially... Wait a second. So, there are generally, if we go to here, if we click on any stop, this menu appears. Now, let's go to Duisburg-Meiderich, for example, the second stop on the line. Lag timing. Basically, this number you see right here, this 2:43. If the train departs... We should probably talk about this further. First of all, line duration. Right now you can see the line takes 25 minutes, right? Now, if you say fit a period, that means it will automatically try to fit this line into a period for example, a week. This is good for auto run later on, but we most of the time don't want this. If you use auto run, you use custom. You always please use custom. Don't use automatic. It just makes you a lot more safe, and it allows you to control a lot more. And now we go extra stop time on. This basically means if we now put a line duration of, for example, if we want the line to take 3 hours, so train starts, goes to overhouse and goes back, and we want the cycle to take 3 hours, it will distribute the waiting time evenly onto all stations. However, pretty much you never want that. Like, that is possibly the stupidest option you have. Instead, you always go manually picked stops. Pretty much always. I don't see there is any reason why you should choose evenly on all stops. And obviously this line isn't like a half an hour long. This is actually like 3 hours long. This is like mostly 1 hour. Not even. But yeah. Now we can actually go back here because we've now fixed the problem I was bothered by earlier. If we go back to Duisburg-Meiderich Street, lag timing. If we look at this, our train departs at 1. From the time it departs to the time it arrives and stops at Duisburg-Meiderich, it needs 2 minutes 43. This is your lag timing. Basically, the time it takes the train from accelerating from the last stop to stopping at the next stop. That is 2 minutes 43. If we now go to this option right here, you have a lag time and automatic. You could either say this lag gets a custom speed, for example, yeah, I only want my train to drive a maximum of 40 kilometers per hour on this line, on this lag. You could do that. There isn't really a point to it, because it's very imprecise. Custom time is a lot more interesting. Here you can see it's 2:43, but if I just tell my train, okay, you should take 3 minutes for this leg. Oh, now we have an exact departure at 5, because we set this default stop time to 1 minute. So if the train departs at 1, we tell it you need 3 minutes to complete the leg between these two stations, and then it stops for another minute. Obviously, it's going to depart at the full minute again. This is the brain-dead way of essentially doing a fixed departure times, like you have in real life. Well, like 99.9% of times on timetables, trains depart at the full minute. So if we want the trains to depart at the full minute, that's one way to do it. However, the system kind of more often than not breaks down when you get to waypoints. Because waypoints are kind of a disturbance in your way. But this is for most of the times a valid way to do it. Another way to do this is continue on to stop 2. These are the settings that actually happen at the stop. These are lag time settings and these are the stop time settings. Here you can allow packs to board or unboard. Pretty simple. If you turn this off, packs can't board. If you turn this off, packs can't disembark. You rarely ever use this. Packs minimum ride time. Yeah, it does. It allows you to say, okay, if a pax enters here, it needs to ride for at least like 1 hour. I really don't know when you would ever use this setting, but it is there. I don't care. Stop time mode. This is the most important one. We've seen one option to normalize your departure times. I would call it probably normalizing departure times. The other one is doing this. There are 3 options. Automatic basically means you take the default stop time that we set to 1 minute. If we go to fixed departure, this will take the next whole minute. Essentially how this works is, the train arrives at 3:43. The game looks at the arrival time and it goes like, if rounding up to the next hour takes less than 30 seconds, which it does in this case, it adds another minute. If it is more than 30 seconds, it doesn't add another minute. And now we arrive at 3:43, so the arrival time is not normalized, which is the disadvantage to using lag timing. But our train actually uses its whole potential in terms of speed on the line, where it's possible. But you don't actually want to use fixed departure. Because the issue with fixed departure is the following. if we now take another fixed departure, but now we suddenly want to say, oh, I want this actually to depart at 6. Yeah, that's a problem. If you change one number, you have to change the entire timetable. Because now this doesn't work anymore, because you would have to change this to 8, and obviously this then cascades down through the entire line. So, how do you then actually do it? Well, it's simple. If you do fixed departure, and then go to custom time, where you can essentially tell the train, hey, you should stop for 1 minute 50 seconds, for example, it will, here, you see, it has an implied stop time. If I now go to custom time, the game is so clever and actually carries on the implied stop time. And now our departure time is normalized again. Normally, it's more than enough to normalize your departure times. I mostly play with this version. Yeah, lag timing is nice, but around waypoints it gets very weird sometimes, which is why I prefer this method. Pretty simple. And now we can just simply normalize our line departures all the way up and down this line. Like so. And now you can see we always depart at the full minute. And here, at the last stop, you can see this. This is the remaining time that the line still has. So, for example, 37 minutes. The entire time to run the line currently is 21 minutes, and then it sits here in Duisburg Road for 37 minutes. However, IRL, this line runs at half an hour intervals. So, we really don't want that, because this would mean your trains would block each other. How do we fix this? Well, first of all, we have to buy a second train. And you might not think that we are actually close to running this line, but we actually are. In fact, to start really auto-run timetabling this thing, we now go to these two trains. We go to auto-run, we select the line, after we selected the two trains, and we press change orders in selection. Boom. Now, theoretically, this line is running. As you can see, here's one train. However, it is not yet timed. In fact, we are kind of in a pickle right now. Look at this. Now, we already had a look at this view before, I think. This is the view of the platform, of the station, right? Here you can see all the departure times. Like, for example, this train always departs Ruhrort at 12:30 right now. Because right here in default in auto-run line, you can tell it whenever it should depart the first train. Essentially, if I change this now to let's see, timetable right here. For example, if I change this now to 6:10, that means the train departs at 6:10 and 10:10 and 10:40 and so on and so forth. Because obviously we set the line duration to 1 hour. If we have two trains on it, you can see that our option for launch trains evenly spaced to fit in one line loop. So 2 trains, 1 hour means an interval of 30 minutes. You could obviously, and it also says here auto interval 30 minutes. This is a nice confirmation of what I just said. A train every 30 minutes on the line. Now, obviously, however, this doesn't work yet, because right now our trains would block each other. Because the train travels up here, goes down from Oberhausen again, and it gets stuck here, because the train is blocking this route, because there's only, one station, one platform, and it's only single track. So how do we fix this? Well, obviously, we can change stoppage times, and the easiest way to do this is just simply change the stop time at Oberhausen Hauptbahnhof. How do I mean that? Well, if we look at the Duisburg-Meiderich Süd station right here, and we go to timetable, here we can see all the stops, all the lines that stop at a station. 1 east-west and 2 east-west. This is track 1, this is track 2. So on track 1, you can see the train always arrives at 14. Pretty simple. And 44. And now we see that this train arrives at 58. We want the two trains, as I already talked about when building this track, to meet here. So we look 14, 58. How much extra time do we stop and do we need at Oberhausen? And it turns out it is 16 minutes. So we add 16 minutes to the stop time. And now these trains exactly meet right here, both at 14, departing, and thus clearing the line for each other. If we now have a look at this, so this just randomly spawned in again. I don't know why it spawned in again, because it was already spawned. I don't know. But now they are both at the end of their respective line. This train now starts traveling down the track, pushing its push-pull configuration down the line. And then this train will also start its day. Starting from Ruhrort, obviously. This train has a few more stops than the other one, but they should all both depart at the same time anyway. So the first train stops and the second train stops. Congratulations. And now they both depart. Look at that. They are both departing at the same time. They've gotten out of each other's ways, and now they go on their merry way without blocking each other. And we will see a lot more of this when we actually, start wheel scheduling, not just auto running. But this can get very complex. But if you have kind of followed along and looked at the tutorial, you should now be able to see why overtakes are so important. Because without overtakes we would not be able to do this, but we are. Now if we just simulate ahead a little bit, you can see that every single day, every single time, every single run, they always meet in the middle and then diverge in their different directions. And I hope that was in-depth enough to just talk about autorun and everything. I don't know how long it will take, but in the next episodes we will actually start tackling scheduling, because whilst this is nice and it works, it is only it's limited. And if you want to have a realistic simulation of your train, you don't want to use autorun. You want to use schedules, but schedules are complicated. So it will take a while to explain everything. And there are so many different approaches to how you can do scheduling that it's actually pretty interesting. But I hope you enjoyed this view, because sure as hell I do. We have the first trains actually properly running on our line. I mean, it depends on what you understand under properly, but I think that that's a good start. So this train stands here for another. Let's just actually go for a ride. At times 10 speed. So we depart Ruhrort right about now. And then we carry on across fields. By the way, if you're asking what mod I'm using for the map mod, it is Global Canvas. It is by far probably the best map mod out there for the game, and I would strongly recommend for you to install it. And there's the other train waiting for the takeover, and now they both depart at the same time and clear each other's ways. That was it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're looking forward to the next episode, where we will talk a bunch about scheduling. See you then.